Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Mindful Mama podcast. Today is exciting because we have two guests on. So, this is Sarah. I have known her for almost 15 years, and she is on with her therapist, Patrick. And today we're going to have Sarah share her story of what she's gone through over the past, how many years would you say, Sarah?
So I would say 22 was, well, we were married for 23 years and dated before that when we were teenagers. So, yeah.
Okay, so I'm really excited to have this story be shared on my podcast. We've never talked about the subjects that Sarah is going to be sharing about. So, Sarah, I'm going to just have you take the floor and we're going to start wherever you would like to start with your story.
I think I would like Patrick to maybe just explain what his book is about, like the main, maybe just, so I knew for a long time that something wasn't right. I knew that I had betrayal trauma and I had worked through a lot of that. And I knew in my gut for a long time, I didn't have a name for it. I didn't know what to call it. I just knew this doesn't feel right. And it's some sort of a pattern of something's happening that's a pattern, and I don't feel cared for in a deep way a lot of times. And just so there was a lot of confusion. And I would say that that would be like the overarching theme was a lot of love and a lot of good times and a lot of confusion. Mainly, do you actually care deeply about me as much as I care about you? And now these thoughts started at the very, very beginning of the marriage. It wasn't before the marriage. Engaged, dating, all of that was a dream, really. But so I had been kind of on a journey of trying to just sort through because I don't make moves quickly and I value marriage very deeply when I took my vows. And so I wanted to really feel sure of what I was doing in the sense of, um, I guess, validated in a way. I just really needed to have a lot of clarity before I made those moves.
Mm-hmm.
And his book, so this is the book, Death of a Thousand Cuts.
Which I told Sarah that I have heard of your book before she told me about it.
Awesome. Thanks.
So,
So thankful.
yeah.
And I had actually described my pain that way to friends before I found this of it was like all of these little wounds where I'm like bleeding out and I'm saying what I need and I'm very clear about my needs and my boundaries, and then it just wasn't being reciprocated in that way, and I was left very, very confused. So if Patrick wants to explain maybe just the foundation of the book and the basics of what emotional abuse is, because I think another thing is a lot of people will not call it abuse.
Mm-hmm.
These types
Yeah.
of patterns and behaviors within a intimate relationship. And so they only look at physical harm, but the studies have shown that physical harm and emotional harm and psychological harm actually does exactly the same thing to the brain
Mm.
and the body, sometimes even worse psychologically, where you end up with PTSD symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And you end up with chronic PTSD because of it. So,
Yeah.
all right.
So
So go ahead.
my inspiration for the book was sitting in my office for decades and particularly within faith communities. Because a lot of the theological undergirding for women submitting and women, being responsible for their husband's well-being. And if he's having a problem, it's up to you to have more sex, cook better meals, be nicer, and then everything will get better, which is a tragic lie. I've
Hmm.
watched it firsthand for years. And so I was like realizing like as from a church perspective, I was a pastor many years ago, that we were completely failing. And I was on a radio and TV show years ago and I had a lot of popularity and I did a couple of shows about emotional abuse and they took off. And I realized, oh my gosh, this is a big problem and we're not really addressing it effectively. We're actually making it worse with the way
Wow.
we treat it. So then I was like, in the process, I realized that what women need more than anything is a safe place to tell their story and to be honest and to get comfort and a validation. I call it vitamin V. We need
I love that.
validation because when you tell your story to the pastor or to your friend or to whoever and they don't believe you, don't talk to them.
Mm,
because what you need is validate. No one comes to my office and pays me money to tell me a lie about their
right.
husband and create this whole story. That whole idea that somebody's not telling me the truth is another big problem because we don't want to look at the facts. Okay. So as I did that, what I realized was I started an online program called Pathway to Hope, which is a membership program. And I did a whole video series. But more than anything, what I wanted to do was create the safe community, a place where you could come in and be yourself and you weren't going to get told what to do. You weren't going to get spiritualized. You weren't going to get, shamed. You could be where you're at, because the
Mm,
thing about emotional abuse is it's profoundly nuanced. This is why you can't just like sit down and be like, here's the three things that you might see three things consistently, but each person who's going to emotionally abuse you is so tricky. They lie very convincingly because they believe their own lies. So in Death of a Thousand Cuts, what I saw was women. If a woman showed up at my office years ago, I was director of domestic violence abuse prevention in both the counties I've lived in. And I, if somebody walks in with a black eye, we all know what's going on,
right.
right? If somebody walks in smiling and looking well put together, but they're dying from 1,000 cuts that you can't see. And
Hmm.
this is the thing with emotional abuse. And from my perspective, I grew up in an abusive, violent, alcoholic home. I was abused as a child. I would much rather have that than the psychological manipulation that goes on in emotional abuse, because that makes you end up feeling crazy. When you're
Mm,
getting beat by your dad, there's a sense in which this isn't okay.
right.
But when somebody looks good and everybody loves them and they have a big spiritual look good and they are a wonderful person and you're the only one that doesn't get it, it starts to really warp your sense of reality. It starts to warp your sense of self-worth. It is absolutely destructive. And so that's why I called the book Death of a Thousand Cuts, because that's what it is. And when I made the cover, I told the artist, I said, I want you to give me a picture that paints the picture in one picture. So you have the nice flowers on the table, but then there's a knife laying there.
Hmm.
And that's what it is. There is this duplicity, like Sarah said. They'll give you flowers and be nice and wonderful. And then the next minute they're cutting you. And then you're like, well, what is it? And so I always tell ladies, like, if we had to cut it into percentages, if they're 80% of the time they're harmful and 20% of the time they're nice, that's not the right percentages. It has to be 51% of the time they're nice, at least. But this is the confusing part because they're so convincing. And when other people love them, it is even more confusing. And they are experts at image management.
Hmm.
They can get you
Wow.
to believe whatever they want. And I've seen this way too many times. So I'm passionate about giving women a safe place to start to do what Sarah's talking about, start to like look at that stuff, start to ask the questions, start to get feedback about what they're really seeing. But when you've been harmed, it takes a lot of courage. The amount of courage that it takes for what Sarah has accomplished is Olympic level. Like to actually say the truth out loud to somebody else again when you've been maligned and told you're wrong and you're not spiritual enough and you have a Jezebel spirit or you're not forgiving or whatever crazy stuff you're told. So when you have that, I strongly believe that safety is the thing that helps us change on information.
Wow. Very,
A-
very good.
And so for me, reading that, it's kind of, it took that book kind of took me on a journey. Reading that gaslighting is considered domestic abuse. I was like, oh, wow. And then I started researching. I'm like, oh, it actually is on the domestic abuse, like national website.
Hmm.
So same with sexual coercion, which I experienced a lot. And I can kind of tell from the beginning, I can kind of go through my whole story if
Yeah.
you want,
Yeah.
but
Let's do that. I would love that.
October is Domestic Abuse Awareness Month, and I really think that there needs to be more awareness around covert abuse, which is hidden abuse, where from the outside you cannot tell what's going on, and the only person really affected is the intimate partner.
Right. And I was
So,
just thinking about your story last night, and how like I was a part of your family for about a year. And I told you when we were on the phone, like I would have literally never known what you were going through. And it's just so crazy And important to remember that you truly have no idea what people are going through. Like, all I saw was a happy family, a beautiful marriage, beautiful kids, like, that is what you see from the outside.
Mhm. So I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm a mom of three beautiful kids. They have been my passion and my life. That my focus, my what I've poured my whole life into, and I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of them, and so maybe the reason you couldn't tell is because I just blocked that part of my life out because it didn't feel safe to process it at the time. And Patrick could probably explain to you more why, because some people would say, well, why didn't you leave
Right.
when this happened? Or why
Right.
didn't you leave when this happened? A big part of that is because I believe highly in forgiveness, and I did forgive a lot of times, and it was a complete forgiveness, but the repair and the actual work and the trust just continued to it every time I forgave, the same pattern would happen again. Lying, hiding some sort of behavior or something, and then usually me having to ask, which it was another I don't know exactly what that is, but, I felt like I was kind of always just on eggshells. My nervous system was on
Mhm.
fire
Yeah.
because I'm always having to ask the question, "Are you safe right now? Are you safe for me?" Instead of the person coming to and saying, "Hey, I messed up. I wanna make this right." It was like, "Okay, finally, yeah, whatever." So, it was a lot of me having to pull that information out, so I just could never really feel safe and relaxed, in my own relationship.
So tragic.
So I can just start from the beginning. Basically, like, I know that a lot of your listeners are Christian women, and I fought against the angle of going at it that way of really those are the type of people that I want to help. And I feel like I can help any woman in any
Yes,
stage of life
absolutely.
with this
Yes.
type of covert abuse. And
Mhm.
that's what I want to do. I feel like I want to use my pain for a purpose with everything I've learned. I've become a trauma informed grief coach and I'm launching a business. Like in the next month, my website's going to be ready. And really, what I want to do is sit with women, hear their stories, because it's almost like what would I have needed at that time? Because I can't tell you how many therapists I went to, and none of them gave me this information that was incredibly life changing and incredibly validating for my experience. So we married very, very young. We got married in the church. Um, it was never my plan to get married that young, but I was so in love. I was 100% devoted. Um, I'm gonna try not to get emotional.
It's okay if you do.
Yeah, please do.
I was, yeah, just head over heels in love, almost to the point of maybe I would put the relationship above anything else. Like this
Mhm.
person is, gonna save me, which isn't necessarily, the right way to look at a partner, but that's what happened. And I took my vows very seriously. So, just a little about my story is the way I described it to Corinne when we first talked, and I think is a helpful way for people to hear it is for me to explain my reality, and then I say like the truth. So, my reality that I was living in wasn't the truth of what was really happening in my intimate relationship. Um, so I think within the first year, I got pregnant with our first child, and it was not a surprise. I was so excited to become a mom, even though I was a really young mom. It's like all I ever wanted to do. Didn't have a lot. It wasn't fancy. It was like we were very young, but we made ends meet, and we had a cute little house, and I was able to stay home with him. I took a like nanny job, and anyhow, we were making ends meet, didn't really have a plan for the future, but just kinda going along and trusting my husband's guidance. It was like very much read my Bible and believed everything about a wife what a wife should be doing and how they should be following the husband's lead and all of those types of things, and I was trying to do that to the best of my abilities. Very early on, I wanna say I'm gonna back up a little just because, all of these puzzle pieces didn't actually really click for the like, it's probably only been about a year since I read this book and everything kinda clicked. So, up until the wedding day, it was like that, like, just this dream, fantasy, whatever. After we got married, within I don't wanna 3 days, the first 3 days on the honeymoon was the first time I ever experienced sexual coercion. Now, my trauma is complex trauma. There's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of things, if you wanna bring in the sexual coercion on top of the pornography use, on top of the physical cheating, there's just a lot of moving pieces, but I didn't have any language for any of this back then, and that's something I really, really hope to be able to express to young women who haven't even gotten married yet, and they are experiencing these things, and it's like, "This is what you're experiencing. This is actually what's happening." But so on the honeymoon was the first time I felt the pressure and the withdrawal in the romantic relationship when I had said no, or like, could we suggested maybe like, let's just watch a movie instead tonight because, on your honeymoon, there's a lot of this activity happening. And and I think I remember saying, can we just watch a movie together tonight? And it was like, in my soul and in my spirit, just like a close down, like a pull back, and I had no language, but I just remember feeling really, really sad and really, really like, "Mm, he's mad at me because I said no?" Or just like, and like I said, all of this is very the overarching theme for me is, like, very confused. So I just remember turning my body into the couch, and I started crying, and I was like I just felt like, "Why am he's mad at me. He's mad at me because I said no. Okay, I can't say no anymore. It's not safe to say no."
Mm.
Because I'm gonna have an emotional pullback or a stonewalling or a silent treatment, and so I was very attuned with that, so I just started not really saying no, and that became a pattern. So that was a very, very early on thing that happened. It didn't feel safe to say no, and I wanna say also for Christian women, that is just impressed upon them so much
Yeah.
that that is their role as a wife, and the role as the couple is to be emotionally healthy and see each other's pain and emotions and see each other's heart. And once you're able to do that in a safe way, then you can move on to those things safely. But if you don't have that, so it's like I'm looking at all these things and I don't know if the emotional intimacy piece was ever really there.
Yeah.
This is also why I'm an advocate for waiting a little till you're a little older to get married, until your brain is able to develop a little more. And I'm not saying that young marriages can't flourish. They totally can,
Mhm.
because this is also an integrity thing.
Right.
It has to do with the person's integrity. Um, so, and then just things I've pieced together about, and I'm not going to share everything because there's so much, but things at the very beginning that were very confusing. I was a virgin. I waited till marriage. Within the first month or two, being told things like, I don't think you're a virgin. And feeling very broken and very hurt because that was something that was so sacred to me. And to the point where, and that is gaslighting. So to the point where I started believing the lie. I started believing, okay, maybe I wasn't a virgin. And I started trying to think really hard. And I started believing maybe I accidentally had sex in high school and I didn't know about it. Like, I truly started believing it.
Wow.
And Patrick can maybe try to explain why these things happen, because I had a friend ask why, and I guess I fully don't understand why still, because it doesn't really make sense to me. And another thing was like the money that was used for my wedding ring, like telling me, oh, I could have bought something else with that wedding ring. Those type of things, like, oh, by the way, I could have, and it made me feel like I could have chose that over you, but I chose you, by the way. Um, just very confused, like,
Yeah.
why are you being mean?"
Yeah.
It's just a joke, it's just a joke, and Patrick could maybe go into more detail of the why behind it.
Well, what you're talking about is somebody who has a massive level of denial in that they can make anything true inside their own head.
Whoa.
Okay. So this is how and why this kind of abuse is so profoundly psychologically painful, because from my perspective, crazy doesn't make sense. And the stuff that he's doing is crazy. Okay. But you're looking at it from the perspective of this great, spiritual, wonderful, kind, generous man that you're married to. And you want this to work. And so you give the benefit of the doubt like every time, or you self blame. And he's gaslighting. Gaslighting in its essence is to get you to not trust your own perception of reality. So to the point where you're doubting the fact that you were a virgin. I don't think there's much doubt that, that's not something you might slip up on, you know? So, my point is like that psychological abuse is designed to make you feel weak and the problem so that you're controllable.
Mm.
And I also was in a place, well, I mean, always just very forgiving and always those type of things. Instead of recognizing them as a problem, it would just make me be like, love me more. Don't you
Mm.
like show me you love me,
Yeah.
please? Okay,
Amen.
maybe those things happened or whatever, but like I just need you to see me and love me. So it just would make me pull harder, just chase harder and do anything I could to keep the peace and be loved in a deep way.
But there's also a theological undergirding for that, which is like, by your winsome behavior, you'll win him over. The
Yeah.
scripture, the scripture that
Right.
says, it's the woman's responsibility to make sure he's well fed, well sexed. And if you don't, then he's going to go out and do some harmful thing as if his behavior is your responsibility.
Sorry,
It's
I just lost my line.
So that, that, that whole theology is part of what Sarah was dealing with, wanting to make it work. And you can't.
And there was a lot of just things that are also considered domestic abuse that a lot of the stuff when I went back and questioned, I'd be like, why did this, and this? So I'm trying to lay a foundation for just the first 3 months of marriage. We have punching walls when we're upset, when we're having a heated discussion. Maybe this didn't happen 10 times, but it happened 4 times or 3 times or whatever you wanna say. But it doesn't matter because the reason why is because it silences the person's voice, so it's like, um, I am not safe to speak my mind here because this reaction is gonna happen. Same with sexual coercion. I'm not safe to say no because this person's gonna react that way and it's not gonna feel loving to me. I just wanna be loved. So I'm gonna do anything I can to protect myself. And so I'm gonna stop speaking up. I'm gonna stop saying no. I'm gonna just you know, try to continue being a good loving wife, all while not realizing my body was screaming at me that I was not okay, not safe. And so, to continue on with the story, there wasn't really a real plan for the future. And I had done some missions work as a teenager. I'd gone to Mexico in an orphanage, and that was just the best experience of my life working with little kids and just seeing their faces light up when you play with them and stuff. And so there was an opportunity for us somehow through discussion and talking with family and stuff. I don't even really remember it being my idea, but I went along with it because it sounded exciting to go do a mission school in Montana. So we did that for 3 months and then we did a 2 month outreach and it's a part of that mission school. So by the end of it, you're certified and it's kind of like the mission is to be known by God and to share God with others. And I mean, this is my perspective, and then there's the truth. So my perspective is I have a loving husband that loves me. We just had a baby. Our son's turning 1. We're going to go do this mission school, and we're going to serve God in this way as a family. The truth was there was a affair, an inappropriate relationship with a coworker that started, and I don't know the exact dates, but either before I was pregnant or right around when I gave birth. So for that whole first year of his life, I imagine um, this was happening, and I did not know. And then we left town. Um, Now, when I look back, it could be seen as almost a way to get away from it. I don't know for sure, but it was the only thing. It was the thing that broke that up.
Mhm.
And now my reality and my truth was still that my family's doing this. So we did that. And those are some of my best memories, honestly. So, like, I am not the type of person that I'm gonna sit and wallow and be like, "My whole last 22 years was a big lie," because that's not how I feel. I don't feel like my life was I feel like there's aspects that were really sad, but I feel like the times that I had, with my kids growing up and stuff, I was all in. So I don't feel like it's this big cloud of lies that I didn't live a real authentic life. Now, the relationship part is still very confusing, but I still just try to maintain a positive outlook and that I can use it, for good. But anyhow, we came back to where we live and we came back and we got an apartment and we were like resettling in our lives after this mission trip, trying to figure out what we were doing. And, it had been decided maybe some like, he was gonna go become a firefighter, so we started to pursue that. I got pregnant with our 2nd child, and all along I wanna try to back up. All along, from the very, very beginning, also, there was like, porn use, like, throughout the whole entire marriage. I think coming into the marriage was also porn use, and my boundary was no, no. So when I first found out about that, I didn't it's so shameful, and back 22 years ago, people weren't really talking about it as
Oh my
much as
gosh,
they
I
are now.
know.
There's
Yeah.
so many talking about, like, just how horrible it is for your brain,
Right.
and, so I didn't really tell anyone. It was kinda something we worked through together and been like, "Okay, I'm gonna stop," but that was a big pattern of that started a lot of the, denial, manipulation, gaslighting, because I would ask, and a lot of times it would be like, "No, this isn't happening. When are you gonna get over it? When are you ever gonna stop asking me about this?" So then it became like like, I'm being too sensitive or but then eventually it'd be like, "Yes, I am actually doing this again." So that's a part of the cycle of the pattern, because a lot of times after that, it would be like kind of like a little honeymoon phase again, right? Where
Right.
we're back to
Right.
and then back to the
Yep.
devaluation and back to the lying and cheat and then back to the honeymoon phase, and it's this pattern of abuse. I'm probably not explaining it the best way, but
You're doing a great job.
okay. So, we come back to Vancouver, that's happening, and I get pregnant with our daughter and, our 2nd child, and we're gonna do the firefighting, and so my reality is that's what we're doing, like, we're gonna get a house, we're gonna start a career, we're doing that, and then somewhere along the way, again, I went along with it because I wanted to be the type of wife that followed her husband's footsteps and what he wanted to do, and we decided together as a couple, with friends and family around, that we were gonna go into full-time missions with this same organization, and we, sent out mission letters, we got support from friends and family. I was incredibly excited about it, like, even though it wasn't my first choice maybe, I was still super excited. I tried to make the best of whatever we were doing. So we moved 500 miles away to Northern California with our 2 kids. Our son was 3 and then our daughter was 6 months old. So my reality was still, I'm going back into missions with my husband. I can't wait to serve the Lord. I can't wait to meet new people here. Now we're church missionaries. They're supporting us. There's so many people that are excited, and I just want to show people love on this mission, right? And my kids, raise my kids together. Now the truth was that this affair had picked up again when we moved back from our mission trip, and so it had been about a year and a half of not being with the affair person. This inappropriate work relationship,
Mhm.
and ended up, um, working at the same or not a different location, but working at the same restaurant, and, I was pregnant with our daughter at the time, so now the truth was that there were affairs happening during my 1st pregnancy and my 2nd pregnancy that I did not know about, and, so that was the truth, and that happened for about, I wanna say, give or take about a year, and then we moved away again. So, one could argue that maybe the fact that we're moving out of town again and getting into missions is to get away from this situation,
Yeah,
subconsciously.
I was gonna ask about that, Patrick, like, the pattern of, like, hopping around to different places. Um, yeah,
Very,
it's
very
interesting.
much a way for the person to manage their image and
Yeah.
continue the process.
Mm,
How do you preach, be a missionary, cheat on your pregnant wife
Right.
and have a conscience. You
Right.
don't. So your denial is, I say this in the book and I talk about it extensively. They have what I call industrial strength denial. This is why I say they don't change, because nothing gets in. Their denial is too strong. Okay. And this is where I see women really, really out of a beautiful, caring motive, give themselves, try, forgive, trust. And then ultimately what it is this just the death of a thousand cuts, because that person's denial was present when she met him, and it's going to continue until he goes to his grave. Now, some people change, but not people with that kind of denial. So this is the thing I often encourage women to look for: is look for the denial. Don't look at the behavior, because the behavior is manipulative.
Right.
So if she was aware that there's that much denial, but remember, in the background for Sarah and millions of other women, there's this voice. Well, you have to be a good wife. Well, you have to be forgiving. Well, you have to. And listen, I go through a great length in my book to talk about the difference between what is forgiveness and the difference between that and reconciliation. Okay. You don't reconcile a relationship with someone who's still doing the activity, but you're forced to in the church because you're supposed to forgive. And in the church parlance, forgive means have relationship. And that is not what
Hmm.
forgiveness is it is at all. And
Wow.
reconciliation is a whole separate process. And I think it's very important. That's why I spent a chapter on it in my book, because this is where I see a lot of women get so destroyed, because they're doing what they believe is the right thing to do to make this better. And the truth is, there's nothing you can do to make it better, because the person you're with is industrial strength denial, and they can make anything true.
Right. It's almost like women are trying to take the responsibility that their husbands should have, and they're taking it upon themselves.
And that's part of the message that they're given.
Mhm. And I could say that, I could vouch for that, feeling like I'm taking on this shame. It's a big, big secret, like, I
Absolutely.
can't tell anybody. I literally can't tell anyone. So to continue on with my story, we'd been living in Northern California for about a year and a half. Long story short, the pastor preached on adultery one morning. My spirit told me something really was wrong because of just our interaction after the service. We went home, laid the kids down for a nap, and, like, kind of like I always had to, with the porn use, have you ever had you're being really quiet. Have you ever had an affair? Have you cheated? This was 6 years into our marriage. I had no idea. And when I asked the question, I think I almost was like, not I mean, I wasn't expecting a yes. I was
Mhm.
like, "Why are you being so
Right.
quiet?" The Holy Spirit, probably my intuition, told me to ask. And then right then and there, it was like the truth came out. Told everything, and I think I obviously went into full down shutdown mode. I couldn't process anything. Instantly, my body started the trauma response of shaking, uncontrollably shaking. Probably for 4 days, I shook like that. Um, Now, mind you, um, if I if I would have been closer to home, I probably would have maybe gone home, but we were 500 miles away from home. I also had 2 young kids. I also was, um, the church missionaries. We're the church missionaries. I have to uphold this what people think of us. They're giving us money. It's my livelihood. It's the way we pay our bills. All of this immense pressure where I'm just like, I can't tell anyone. And we were in a small group with a church family, couples from church. And I remember going to a small group that week and wanting to tell these women, and I literally couldn't. It was the shame. It was the embarrassment. I didn't know who to tell or who to talk to. Now, we did talk to some people that were, kind of overseers at at the base where we were working, and they gave us some books, and I would say we put a Band-Aid on it. But I was very forgiving I was writing all these notes, excuse me. It was almost like a re-honeymoon phase again where, the attachment was back like the beginning, and it was like this release, and all of those walls had come down. I was able to forgive. I went back and read some of my journals, and I even felt so much empathy and grief for this woman who knew that this man had a family and was a Christian man, and that's what she saw from a Christian man. I felt
Wow.
so, even though she was the person who messed around with my husband, I felt this immense empathy for her, that that's the type of example and that's what she thinks Christian men do. And I was sobbing for her. I was like, this is, and it was just like I said from the beginning, confusing. I'm so confused. We're church missionaries serving the Lord together as a family, and you just told me that the first 6 years of our marriage you've been having an affair on and
Yeah.
off, and I have 2 young kids. I don't know how to reconcile any of that in my brain. And I was so devoted, and I never ever wanted this to happen to me. I never wanted divorce. I never went into marriage thinking I needed to get a divorce, or that I would ever even consider it, right?
Mhm.
Um, so at that time, I forgave, and we actually redid our vows. We basically, it was like starting over again. S- Um,
It should have been him.
2 years.
It should have been him redoing the vows, not you. You kept them all.
Well,
Right.
yeah, we did mutual redo vows, and we just said them to each other at the beach in like a little private ceremony together. And I really felt like for about a year and a half, things were good again. Like we were, I think I just kind of put that to the back burner of my brain because I got pregnant with our third child. Now I will say, when I got pregnant with her, I thought to myself, if things don't change and get better within the next 5 years, I can leave. Like which is not a normal thought to have when you get pregnant. Um, um, I just needed that like protection in my head to be like, okay, when she gets in, because I don't want to have to put her in daycare when she gets, and nothing's wrong with daycare if you have to do it either.
Totally.
I don't want to offend anyone, but I
Absolutely.
personally didn't want to. And so, I made it till she was about 3 years old, but until I really started having lots and lots of health issues. But we ended up getting pregnant with her and still living in California. But then about a month before she was born, we decided to move up here very suddenly. There was a family member that was very, very sick, and we didn't know how much time we had. And so I'm very thankful that we did that. We did not have a job. It turns out, ends up getting hired as a youth pastor at the church that was supporting us as missionaries. We moved into the house next door, and I had my third child, and things are going great. Now we're just in a different form of ministry, right? We're still doing ministry. It's in a different form. We had healed from all of this um, trauma in our marriage, and I thought, it's clean slate. Like we're doing this again. This was the time when everyone got smartphones for the first time. It was in 2009 when smartphones were new. Now, mind you, we had just got hired on as youth pastors. We had gone through all of this stuff in our relationship where I thought everything is different now. We're not doing this anymore. We're gonna redo our vows and everything's
Yeah,
gonna be
like
different.
everything's redeemed.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right, right. And I would say within the first 3 months, I found more porn on the phone, and I immediately was like, you have to step down. Like these kids,
Yeah.
you're not better.
Yeah.
You're not better. It's not getting better.
Mm-hmm.
Now, mind you, anytime that even just the porn would happen or whatever, and there'd be that cycle, my whole entire body would go into complete spasm, like nervous system. And Patrick could probably explain more what's happening, but like my whole body just was complete, like my cortisol levels will probably through the roof. But I have a newborn baby when this is happening.
Yeah.
Um,
And you're already
they
hormonally at such a fragile state.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, during all the pregnancies and not having
Yes.
the support I needed really, from my partner. I said, "No, you need to step down." We ended up having a meeting with the eldership at that time. I just wanna paint a picture because this part's pretty hard for me. Um, I was holding our newborn baby, and I'm the only woman in this room, and I'm expressing the fact that I would like him to step down because he's not better. Now, I don't know if they realized that we had already gone through all of these things, but I'm using my voice and saying, "This is not okay. These kids deserve more." And they basically looked at me and said, "This is just something that men deal with. All of us have probably dealt with this at some time. We can work with him. It's okay. He doesn't need to step down."
Hmm.
And so my voice, I just felt completely invalidated. And Patrick could probably explain more what
Yeah,
was happening in that moment.
I'm curious what the root of you said it was the elders, right? Of the
Yeah,
church. What is the root of the deflection? Is
right.
it the biblical I had a hard time when she told me this story a couple weeks ago, the deflection of that.
I hear it
Yeah.
nearly every week. This is the story I hear. And there's multiple reasons for it. And, having been a pastor in my past, I can understand what the reason is from the pastoral perspective,
Okay.
because, you know, uh, I believe that a lot of theology is based in denial.
Hmm.
To have a strong theology means you're already denying a bunch of things. So you want to go through the laundry list of these great men who have been caught doing terrible things? I mean, just recently, there's a guy who got busted for child sex. He's got the largest church in Texas. So the duplicity is deep. And and my belief is spiritualized denial is the worst. When you have
Hmm.
convinced yourself that God is on your side about whatever thing you're deciding, and it doesn't matter what the facts are. Those
Right.
guys didn't care about the congregation. They didn't care about you. They didn't care about your children. They didn't care about your husband. What they cared about is not losing their youth pastors so they can keep this thing going.
Right.
So that's denial. But
Hmm.
what happens is we give the benefit of the doubt. We look through the rose-colored glasses. We don't want that who wants that to be true?
Right.
Mhm.
We want them to be what we think they are, good, healthy, spiritual men that want the best for everyone. Well, I'm just telling you, that's a rarity, not a normalcy.
Mhm.
That's the part that is hard to understand. Like, really? Like, the look good, the spiritual veneer is the worst. And I'm telling you from 30 years of experience, those guys, their denial is the worst. And they always cover it with some biblical verse, or they have a
Right.
position, but they're basically liars. And so when you start to see that, like Sarah said, your body goes into a whole nother reaction because you're like, oh my gosh, what I thought was safe is actually very dangerous. The thing I built my life on, the thing I'm trusting to help me, can I trust it? That creates a whole cascade of issues. And every single one of us is designed to avoid the pain. Okay. But it's my strong belief. This is my belief about how the world works. The avoidance of pain is the beginning of all unhealthy behavior.
Wow.
And I strongly believe that in the church, and I'm coming from a guy that planted a church and pastored it for 10 years, so I'm not in any ivory tower. I was the guy that would have said that stuff to her. The truth is that the spiritualized version of their reality is their way to avoid pain and feel noble at the same time.
And so I was expressing, I don't feel safe, like,
You learn.
in some sort of way, in some sort of way. Um, I put my foot down and we ended up stepping down, even though that was not the recommendation. And I just remember at the time, people were irritated, people were confused, and so I felt like it was my fault for also having a voice in that
Wow.
situation.
Yeah. Because now it's affecting the church. That's
Yes.
huge.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was super. I was like, I have what I think is the truth and like what needs to really happen.
Yeah.
Like, this person, he really needs help. Like, someone help, help. I'm like screaming, help. And it's like, no, it's fine. We can work. And so then I put my foot down. And it was like, okay, now you're for saying this is my boundary. And no, I'm not going to do
So
this
I just
now.
want to make
Now,
this point because it's so important. What you're saying, this is like a colossal spiritualized version of victim blaming.
Oh my gosh.
You're the victim, and they're all looking at you like you're the problem.
Wow. Oh my
So,
gosh.
so that's a double tragedy for you. Like, wait, and then now you're a pariah within the community because you're telling the truth, and now everybody's rallying around the perpetrator who's cheated repeatedly, who's looking at porn, who's lying through his teeth. Well, that's the guy we want to lead the youth.
Ugh.
What?
Well, and
That
I don't think anyone
that doesn't
from the outside really knew why. Nobody from the outside really
didn't
knew
ask
why,
either.
but
They didn't
yeah, they didn't ask.
investigate.
Nobody
They're
asked.
not wondering, well, because somebody who's looking at porn, that's not like oh, this day one, this just started. There's
Right.
Mhm,
always a
Absolutely.
backstory. And if you're a pastor,
Absolutely.
why aren't you going to look
mhm,
into it? Well, because you don't want to know. And
yeah,
so,
Mm.
the tragedy for you is on a colossal level. And the physiological impact of that is so
mhm,
damaging. And
mhm,
that doesn't count the fact that you're a mom times 3 and you're,
Right.
a year away from a last pregnancy and what your body's gone through in that way. And here's the other thing.
mhm,
Those guys spiritualizing that and then victim blaming you is also radically unloving to him.
mhm,
Oh, absolutely.
It's a bypass,
Absolutely.
mhm.
and it
Yeah,
irritates.
yep, yep, and so, yeah, I mean, the second part of the story is kind of like what Patrick said, is I had gotten where this kinda same cycle was continuing even after we had left that position and had a different job. We bought a house and the same type of a lot of that cycle of whatever was around pornography use, and I was highly stressed. I mean, I was, like, going to the doctor for anxiety, getting Xanax, trying to maintain my anxiety because I just was having constant panic attacks. And I remember it was when the first time I could feel like I can't breathe properly, like something's wrong to the point where I started to go to like um, a doctor that helps you with like an asthma doctor or something, like
Right.
someone a respiratory therapist. And I had all this test done and they're like, you're fine.
Yep.
It's
It's
like literally my body
pathologizing
just
it.
can't get a full breath in. And then when my daughter was around 3, it was something had happened again. It was the 10-year anniversary or our 10-year anniversary, I'm sorry. And I just was like gonna be 30 and I was like, I can't keep doing this. I've done this for so long. Like I just can't keep doing it. It was so hurtful and hard. And so I had made a plan in my head to try to figure out, okay, she's 3 now. I can put her in daycare. I could get a job and start working towards trying to be separated somehow. And then I got incredibly sick. So my whole entire body shut down. And now looking back on it, and so this is like a second part that I really want people to understand and realize that is a part of this type of abuse. I mean, it can be any type of abuse, probably, but you can get chronic illness from emotional abuse.
Yep.
You can get so sick because the cortisol levels in your body are so high for so long. So what happened to me was I started getting ear symptoms first, and I actually just read something somewhere. It was like a study where women in narcissistic or emotionally abusive relationships ended up with inner ear issues. It was like a whole
Mm.
study about it. So, we were going all around to doctor because I literally couldn't walk. I couldn't drive. I could barely see straight. I was just so dizzy. All of my testing came back normal. They couldn't diagnose me with anything. And so now, all of the things that I was going to try to deal with, those things got pushed back because now my health was, the number one priority. I could barely get out of bed some days. After about 2.5, 3 years, I ended up finding a doctor at UCLA who told me I had this really rare inner ear condition, and I think I had it also diagnosed by a different doctor, but anyhow, this health journey is like a whole story on its
Yeah.
own, like, I literally could do a whole
Yeah.
podcast just with that. But anyhow, I was so sick for so long, and I finally found a doctor that gave me a diagnosis, and he said I would do surgery. So I have had major inner ear surgeries on each side of my head to fix a hole in the bone in my inner ear. Mind you, I wasn't any better after we had these surgeries. And I went to Johns Hopkins to get a second opinion, and the head doctor there, who's been doing this for 25 years, looked at all of my records, and he told me, "If you were my patient from the beginning, I wouldn't have done surgery on you. And I think you just have some sort of, like, chronic migraine that's causing you stress and dizziness, like a dizziness, a stress, just, like, that's basically was his diagnosis, like,
Wow.
it's a stress migraine, like, something's going on." I went on an antidepressant, and literally within a month, a lot of my symptoms were gone. So, all that to say, hindsight is 2020. This is why I wanna do this work. I don't want if I can save one woman from ever having to go through the chronic illness portion of it and recognize the patterns earlier and get out before their body is in on fire,
Yeah.
I that's what I wanna do, because now, like I said, I'm not the type of person that lives in regret, so, it's like, it's water under the bridge. I had surgeries. I probably didn't need those surgeries, um, but all that to say, in this last, wanna say 3 months since I've been on my own, um, the amount of migraines I've had has been cut in half. So, that's huge because usually by the end of the month, I don't have enough migraine medicine to even make it through the month. So and I realized this month, I've only gone through half of my migraine medicine. What is happening to me? And it's like, not that I don't have stress, but
Right.
it's been very much highly, highly, and so basically, yeah, I mean, I'm kinda going, I feel like going all over the place, but a lot of these things that happened continued to happen after the surgeries, just these same
Right.
patterns of and also with other things. So there was, like, substances that were used that were legal substances, but I didn't love the fact, and so I had said, like, "Hey, could we not, I don't really like you doing that, whatever." And then that was hidden for, like, 3 years
Mm,
on top, so then I'm just like, "What else are we lying about?"
right.
It was just was but I didn't, like I said at the beginning, I didn't have any language. I just felt so alone a lot, and I felt so confused, and I felt because there was so much love and care too,
Right.
and during the
That's what I
surgeries,
was gonna say. I remember you talking
amazing
about
care
that. Mhm.
amazing caretaking, you know, and so then I wanna be loving and forgiving, and so I know that the word trauma bond gets
I
put
was
around a lot, and
Yeah, I
Patrick
wanted
doesn't like
to
that word.
mention that.
Patrick doesn't like that word. I'm gonna let him
Yeah,
kinda
let's
say
go into that.
his take. There is something that I feel like, almost like because of the emotional abuse, I felt like I needed that validation constantly and still have a hard time feeling like, "Do you see me? Do you see the pain I have?" Like, just wanting to have that validation, I guess, and for a while feeling like, "I can't live with you, but I can't live without you," and so that was very disorienting, confusing, but I'll let Patrick
Yes.
kind of explain
One
that.
of my concerns about the term trauma bond is it actually comes from some work that a guy named Patrick Carnes did in the 90s. And he was specifically relating it to betrayal trauma. And so in today's version, what I hear a lot of women who have been in these kind of relationships say is that I'm trauma bonded to him. And I want to say, no, no, you're not. The problem is you're not bonded. That's what your problem is.
Oh,
There is no
interesting.
bond.
Okay.
Contrary to like one of the ways it's talked about, like, two guys in a foxhole and they survive the 2 days of war and they're bonded by that trauma, right? And then 40 years later, they're like, hey, man, I love you. They're so bonded from that trauma. This is not what we're talking about.
Oh,
What we're talking
okay.
about is you being destroyed by another person. So the way I like to talk about it is like, look, when Sarah started talking, what she talked about was the beauty of what she desired. I want to have this relationship. I want to have this family. I want to do what God wants. I want to have all this love and care and nurture and all this beauty in my life that I'm going to participate in and mutual receiving it. And that's the dream. What she didn't know is that she married a liar. What she didn't know is that he was never going to participate in that dream. But the dream is a good one. And I hope the dream comes true. And I think the bond that we feel is to the dream.
Mm,
So when we start to,
mhm,
I've seen this with Sarah, as you start to grieve the death of your dream,
mhm,
that person loses power.
mhm,
But what gives them power is our attachment to the dream. It's not them. And by the way, isn't it normal to want to be loved?
mhm,
Isn't it normal to want to be loved by the person who says they love you?
mhm.
And when Sarah talks about all the physiological impact, so many of the women I have the privilege of working with start the journey because their body's failing. They can no longer do the, patch it together, work
Yeah,
hard
that's
or try hard.
interesting.
Their body's just like tapping out. Nope, done.
So they finally are starting to really listen to themselves when their body is giving them no option.
Wrecked. But in every case, their gut has been screaming.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But here's the problem with emotional abusers. They get you to doubt that. So I have a whole part of my book where I talk about trusting your gut because I believe it's the crucial mechanic of you being in a safe world. And when you suppress,
That part was huge. That part was huge for me.
yeah, when you suppress that, then you're controllable.
Wow. I love that.
And so for me, the gut, as a believer, that's to me is the Holy
Right.
Spirit. You know,
Mhm.
Yeah.
you can say your gut, you have a gut feeling, but that's God given to us.
Absolutely.
But we are, I especially, I was also just made to feel like if I speak up about these things, I'm I'm bad. I'm hurtful. I'm harmful. Telling my truth and telling the truth of what happened to me felt so, and I still feel a sense of guilt for speaking up,
Hmm.
even though what I'm saying is true.
And I'm so proud of you for coming on and
Me too.
sharing, even though you feel that way.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. And it's because my desire is to, I don't want anyone, not one woman, to deal with what
Yeah.
I've gone through.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And the other thing that I want to say is the love and care is still very real. Those feelings haven't gone away. I've just recognized, trusted my gut enough to know this person is not safe for me. Emotionally or intimately, this person is not safe. And I've accepted it instead of pushing it away. And that's something that Patrick has taught me is to accept the things that are true
Mm.
about accept the truth and the full picture of the truth.
yeah.
So,
Well, I think the miracle is your courage. I mean, so many times you've been undermined and told from a spiritual authority or from your husband or from somebody that you're wrong and this you're perceiving it wrong. And yet you in all of that, your courage is amazing. And then you're still this loving, nurturing, caring, want to help other people. You should hate people after what you've been through.
Right.
But it speaks so much about the beauty of who you are, Sarah. And the thing that hurts me is that that was never appreciated.
mhm,
And I'm hopeful that one day you'll be in a circumstance where someone appreciates the depth and the beauty of who you are instead of undermines it, destroys it, and uses it to harm. And I have worked with so many women, and I've never met one that wasn't courageous and still loving. It's always so inspiring to me to see the courage and the love that comes in spite of all of the harm. And I'm talking maniacal harm. This
Hmm.
isn't just your, average garden variety harm. This is like deep, duplicitous, spiritually involved to the point where your body is shaking kind of harm.
mhm.
It's just horrific. So I am so amazed by you and what you've been able to accomplish. And um, I'm very grateful to be a part of the process.
So I am starting a coaching group as well for women that's going to be called Echoes of Her Bravery. And I'm on Instagram as Echoes of Her Bravery. And really, that's been the journey for me is just being brave and finally saying, enough is enough. I've had enough. Um, and being honest about what emotional abuse has done to me, really. And, and also helping women be aware of now there's a whole list which you haven't gone through, in depth, but at the introduction here, these are all the reasons of different, I don't know what page it's on. The rationalizing,
Yep.
minimizing, justifying, spiritualizing, denying, blame shifting, ignoring, gaslighting, and raging. They're, those are,
Tools in the toolbox of the person who's doing the
of
harm.
emotional abuse. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And, most of the women I worked with that come from the faith community, their general view of the world is people are good.
yeah. Hmm.
And it takes a long time for them to realize, wait, that's not true. People are maniacal and evil and, horrific.
Well, and also I will say, there was a big part of me during we had some separations where I really was like still searching out for love and genuine care. I really wanted to see what type of love and genuine care I was going to get. And the first time was a big huge silent treatment for a long time with no follow-up, no texting about how are you doing, no, to the point where I was confused. There we go again with our overarching theme of confusion. I finally said something, and then it was like, well, I thought you wanted space, so I stopped reaching out because I thought you. So, so there you go with the blame shift.
Right.
This
Because of
is
you.
Yes.
yes. I didn't do what I thought I should do because I thought you wanted the space. So now it's just very confusing. And then even just this last one, I want to say 3 months, I have done a few things to kind of see about love and care. I'm still wanting that love and to just test it and see. I don't know how Patrick would describe that, but it feels so sad. And I was telling him yesterday, my sadness comes from because I've been happy, but I've been real sad. um, my sadness comes from feeling it feels like rejection. Because I still was looking for some sort of love and care, and each time that I would try in some way, and this other time was a text message, a very intimate text message. I'm not going to send details, but that text message was ignored to the point where I was like, if I received this text message from this person, I would be responding instantly. And then the reason why it was ignored, later on asked, and it was like, well, I didn't think that how would you ever, why would you ever say those things to me? I couldn't believe you were sending me those things. And so it was like, again, like instead of responding in a kind, loving way, it was like, that was a crazy message. It was, you sent me a crazy message. That's why I didn't respond. So the blame shift. So I started really noticing these patterns. And so that's what I want to help people with, women in particular. And I'm not saying this doesn't happen to men because it definitely does, but it is so covert and hidden.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And we have denial. That's part of the problem with this is that, we have to come out of our own denial to get safe. And I want to just make this point really clearly, like the denial of the person doing the abuse is very different than the denial of the person surviving.
Mm.
The person,
Can you explain that a little more?
the person doing the harm is denying the reality that they're being harmful. The person who's being harmed is denying it to survive.
Right.
Hmm. Hmm.
Huge difference. And if there was no harm, the survivor wouldn't have denial.
Hmm.
But the harmful person is going to have denial no matter what. So the question is,
And
how much are we going to take?
And a big thing for me that I want women to realize is like the impact versus the intention. So someone can tell you I wasn't intending on doing that. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. That wasn't my intention. They can say that, but until they're able to realize the impact it's had on you and actually fully embrace that impact, they are still in denial because they weren't intending to. And so it becomes this really, really confusing thing where it's like you don't see the impact that this has had on me.
Well, and I think
So
I think it's important that you bring that up, Sarah, because listen, my kids used to try this on me. Well, Dad, I didn't mean to. I'd be like, you know what, son, I'm so glad you didn't mean to, but tell you what, I'm going to give you credit for what you did.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the things that people in high levels of denial want to do. They want you to deal with them minus the context. So it doesn't matter that I've been abusive or I've been looking at porn for years or having affairs. None of that matters. You should deal with me right now without any of that in the way. And that's
Mm.
how their brain makes sense of all that, because they just deny it. And they go home and have a great night's sleep. Meanwhile, you're like shaking and can't sleep.
And that was another thing. It was like, oh, everything's been fine for the last 6 months. But like, yeah, what?
Yeah.
Okay. We're missing the bigger picture. We got to look at it as a whole entire picture, you
Yeah,
know?
I recently saw a quote that said intention is not the same thing as action.
Correct.
You can have good
Mhm.
or bad intention, but the action is what matters. What actually happened is what matters. And I was
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
whoa.
And
Because
so this is
everyone uses that word. That wasn't my intention. That wasn't my intention.
that's denial.
Mhm.
Wow.
Mhm.
So the
Mhm.
one of the statements I make in the book that is one of the things I help women with is that you have to be from Missouri, the show me state. It doesn't matter what you say, you're going to have to show me. And
Mhm.
so much of what I see is women benefit of the doubting it. That's what they're taught.
Mhm.
They're taught that. And also they want this person to love them. They want this to change. Instead of wanting it, live in reality. What
One also
actually
with
happened?
betrayal. Yes, with betrayal trauma as well. I feel like, especially within the church, women are pressured to just forgive and forget and move on in an intimate relationship like nothing ever happened. While along, they're still being completely psychologically abused and like they're not in a healthy space to be uh, sexually involved or anything with this person who's harmed them so much, but they do it anyways because it's the right thing to do. That's what wives do. They just forgive and move on,
And
you know?
that actually bolsters denial.
Hmm.
And I'm just like curious, Patrick, from your perspective, how, if you could see, like, if you could imagine how the church could change this for women like Sarah, like,
Hmm.
what is a path that we could take in the church specifically when women are running into 20-year-long porn addictions with their husband, lying, betrayal, being cheated on physically or emotionally. I see it so often with women that it's just thrown back on the women. Oh,
Yes.
yep, sorry, you gotta forgive. You need to have more sex.
Yep.
You need to never
Hmm.
say no to your husband because if you're depriving him, he has to go somewhere else. And it's
Hmm.
always blamed on the
Yeah.
women.
Hmm.
Talk about a massive spiritual blame shift.
Mm,
That's what that is. And so, first of all, it's a daunting task because part of the problem is an underlying theological belief.
yeah.
Okay. The theology is from the Bible. This is how we're supposed to operate, which I believe is not true. And there's a mountain of evidence that it's not true. But you get to a pastor and look, I was a pastor and you would have had a hard time convincing me at one point. But the thing that changed my mind was watching the harm over and over and over and watching the failure of the things we were saying and seeing the families. I'm in the front row seat of watching the destruction. I'm like, this is not good. We have to do something else. These people are
Mhm.
being harmed and we're giving them the same old rhetoric, theological harm. So you'd have to change theology, one, which is a big ask for most people because
Huge.
they're not going. As soon as you get into that realm, it gets really ugly. And I've gotten the emails and the death threats,
Right. I
So,
believe it.
but i- if we could put the care, and one of my mentors was Eugene Peterson. I don't know if you know who he is, but he translated the message. But he was also a pastor for 30 years. But he said to me, he's like, look, our greatest gift is to be with, not to teach, not to be right. It's to be with our brother, our sister, our fellow human, be with them. Well, if that's our goal, you're going to have a hard time with theology because theology is about compliance. Do you have the right beliefs? And if you don't, we're going to stand on the fact that you don't have the right beliefs, and we're going to build a wall, and you got to be on the other side, right? So theology is about compliance. You go to a church, you have to sign the belief statement. That's not actually fellowship, that's compliance. So that's one of the major problems. And then you have the motif of the responsibility being on the women is directly result from the theology. And you have a vast majority of leadership that is, think about it, I just did a YouTube video on my YouTube channel, a narcissistic pastor.
Interesting.
And you have a system that says men are right, women are wrong, right? Women were deceived. Men are more spiritually. That's why the man has the last word. You can't challenge a leader. They are, God's man. You can't touch God's anointed, blah, blah, blah. So that all is a setup for denial, spiritualized denial, and narcissism. You're untouchable. Instead
And
of
pride.
correct,
Pride is huge.
instead of caring and humble and connected, it's about being right. I want to be connected. I want to know Sarah's story. I want to understand where she's coming from. I want to know what she's feeling, what she's thinking. I want to be with her in it. And then from there, we can navigate to a place of health. But that's not how the church is set up. And so, I talk about it to some degree in the book about how to navigate the church if you're in this scenario. And generally, my advice is don't go to them. 99% of the time, it's been a failure.
That's
and
so
more
sad.
harm. And again, it pains me to say that.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
the church could be a massive healing element.
Right.
It's
And
the
that's what
actual
it's
truth
called
is
to
it's not.
be as well. That is what it's called to be.
Yeah, but it's not. We're way off on that. And, I have the evidence and the receipts for that.
Not only to mention, I will mention this, that not even physical harm, but pornography use is so rampant
Yep.
in the church, especially. And a lot of people would even go as far to say that it's not adultery. But if you have stated that as your boundary in your marriage, and that's something you've come to an agreement with,
Right.
it is cheating.
Yep.
And it is lying, and it does the exact same thing. And I joined this divorced women's Facebook group, and I was just on there the other day, and this woman was asking a question about, this is just like general knowledge, and like, I hope we can change the narrative for young men and boys too,
Yeah.
to realize women are fed up with pornography use.
Yes.
They don't want it in their relationships. This woman was posting on this divorce support group, and she was saying, when I'm talking to somebody on a divorce or on a dating app, when do I ask? So, like, what is your relationship with porn?
Yeah.
At what point do I? And I am not kidding you, 600 women in the comments. All of them said, I would rather stay single than be with someone who watches porn. I would rather be alone than be with someone who watches porn. So it was 600 women deep just from that one comment. 80% of marriages are ending right now just because of porn use
Yep.
alone. I just read that somewhere. It is a major, major, major problem. Not even all the things we've been talking about, the emotional abuse and all that. Just calling men out on porn use alone, and I'm not saying to just men. Women have porn addictions
Right.
too. But
Everyone.
we have to change the narrative about how it's okay. It's not okay.
Well, and just how it
Especially if you've
affects the brain too. Like I
Yes.
love
Oh,
I
yes.
love the website Fight the New Drug, and it's
Yes.
all about porn, and it's so
Yes.
fascinating
Yeah.
and terrifying.
Mhm.
It's terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so this if anyone's listening and maybe you're older and you're not dealing with it, 50s, 60s generation, they might not have such a big problem, but our generation, the 40-year-olds on down who were young 20-year-olds when the internet came out, it's a huge problem. And we are in denial about how big of a problem it is. It affects every aspect of your life. It affects
does.
you being able to keep a job.
Yep.
It affects you being able to function the next day. It affects you being able to be there for your kids and be an intimate part of what's going on with your kids because you always have that in the
Right.
background.
Well, and if you're
So,
talking about it from a Christian perspective, there's
right.
also the psychological reality of the shame. The layer for the Christian is now they're at odds with God and they're a no good for nothing person. And so that shame, the shame
Mhm.
that I'm the problem, is also wildly impactful for your well-being in the sense that now you feel inadequate. So are you going to take,
Mhm.
are you going to have, are you going to, what are you going to be like in relationships? You're going to be withdrawn.
Mm.
That shame is debilitating. So
Mhm.
it's a double whammy because the shame will paralyze you.
And I will say, I took on the shame. I was able to see the childhood wounds.
Yeah.
I was able to feel deep empathy for the
Yep.
fact that maybe you didn't feel safe in your childhood.
Yep.
Maybe you didn't feel safe sharing your stuff without feeling like you were going to get some sort of a lecture. I saw all of those things, and those were big reasons to keep me stuck. And maybe those reasons are true for some men, and that's good for them to figure that out.
Mhm.
But that is not a reason to keep harming. That is not a reason to. So that's what I had to finally realize was I've said my boundaries. I've said what I accept. I said what I didn't. This is continuing to happen. At what point do you accept that the person doesn't actually care about your feelings?
Exactly. Right. And yeah,
Because everything is pointing to that. So that's what I had to get drastically honest about. And it is so painful because it feels like a rejection.
well, and it,
Because I still care so much. I have so much I can't not care. I don't know how, but I would never intentionally hurt someone after they told me this thing you're doing is hurting me. So that part is very confusing. And to say it's an addiction, at some point it's not just the addiction. You're choosing to continue to harm them.
correct. It's denial, not addiction.
Denial about what?
What they're doing. So
Denial about everything about it, right?
correct. And so like, I worked in drug and alcohol rehab for, I don't know, 20, 25 years. I've confronted thousands of addicts. And you used to think that, the addiction is what killed people. And then over time, I realized, actually, no, what kills people is denial.
Hmm.
If I had one superpower, I could do one thing to change the world, I would remove denial. And we would have a
Wow.
vastly different world if that were the case. But, when someone's denying the fact that they're destroying you, that's the reason why they're doing it. If, like you, Sarah, they have clarity, like, I don't want to hurt someone. I want to be aware of what I'm doing to them. They don't have that because they deny it. It's fine. It's not causing them any problems. I'm not doing anything wrong, whatever their denial is. That denial is what causes the harm and also what confuses you because you're looking at the
Mhm.
world through a non-denying lens and
Mhm.
you want what's best for everyone. That is not the truth for somebody who's willing to abuse you.
I made kind of a list of long-term deception versus a one-time lie, the difference between I was trying to process why it was so hard for me and just to jump ship kind of, but like a long-term deception is different than a one-time lie.
Yes. Yes.
And that because of the denial it takes to continue living with yourself
It's the long-term harm is a revelation of the depth of their denial,
to be able to lie for that many years.
which also means
Mhm.
they believe their own lies, which is why they're not going to change. So the long-term deception is a revelation of where they're at.
Mhm.
Somebody does something, they slip up like all the years I've been doing this, like somebody goes on a business trip and they drink too much at the bar and they end up like hooking up with a lady one night and they're devastated and they change their lives, which is different than they do
Mhm.
that and they do it and then they do it and they do it and they do it. They keep doing it. Like
Mhm.
that's somebody who's living in reality. I made a mistake. Okay? That's
Mhm.
different than I'm going to see how long I can do this and I'm going to keep lying to myself and everyone else. That is part of what makes people very ill internally is when you're living long-term deceptive person because their denial is so high.
Mhm.
Makes you feel
And yes, and I also learned the term lying by omission, which is basically not giving me the full story. And so that is long-term deception, but also what it does for the person, which I didn't have language for this for so long, but it makes it so I didn't get to make real decisions about my real life in real time.
Yeah.
Um, so, for example, someone's having my partner's having an inappropriate relationship with someone else while I'm having babies. It's putting my health in danger and their health in danger.
Yes.
And so all of these things that you don't really have time to process for because it's just so complex. I've been processing more and more, and it's like the worst feeling in the world to, in my case, be married in a monogamous relationship, go to your OB, ask for a STD test, and you're also a missionary. So, like the cognitive dissonance, that's another word we need to like maybe explain because the cognitive dissonance for me kept me stuck for a long time because there was so much good and there was so much bad. And my brain didn't know what to do with it. So can you explain? Do you have cognitive dissonance in your book? Do you
Well,
explain
not
that in your
not
book?
in those terms specifically, but I go into the sort of the more practical side of that, like how you keep being strung along by this, well, by the denial, and how, you know, you can't look at the world the same way they do, which is what confuses you. And they keep, I call it breadcrumbing. They breadcrumb you with just enough good. They have this sixth sense about when the edge is, and they just keep doing it. And the whole thing is built on trying to maintain control.
Hmm. That's what someone asked me the other day. Why why do you think those type of things started early on in the marriage? The whatever saying mean things
Mm-hmm.
or and really it is control, power and control. But then I want to know, this is how I operate. What's even deeper behind the power and control?
Right.
What
Yeah.
is making the person want to feel like they need to be in power and control?
Hmm.
Just put out a video on my YouTube channel about how narcissists are made. And I go into that in some detail about what the under scoring realities are that creates that kind of denial. And I believe strongly that narcissists are made, they're not born,
Hmm.
through experiences that they have and how
Right.
they choose to handle them.
Yep.
I believe strongly that everyone throughout their entire lives has what we might call moments of clarity. They have a revelation about something. And in that moment, what they choose to what they choose to do at that moment is what determines whether they have high levels of denial or they have high levels of health. So you see this all the time with people. They have a moment of clarity, and then instead of taking that information in and doing something about it, they double down on denial. And they double down on denial, and they double down. And this is what ends up that's how you get to be a narcissist. Is you just keep doubling down on denial instead of dealing with reality. So again, the avoidance of pain is the beginning of all unhealthy behavior. So
So
rather than
could
deal
that
with,
also be considered stuffing? Like when you're stuffing things, like denial
yeah, well,
being stuffing it?
stuffing is a little bit different than denying, because stuffing you're
Okay.
repressing. Okay. Denial,
Okay.
you're actively avoiding the truth of what's happening. You
Okay.
may be creating an alternate storyline. Like,
Okay.
oh, I'm not an alcoholic. No, it's not true. They're just, instead of I'm going to suppress the feeling of depression, I'm going to suppress the feeling of being overwhelmed. That's more what the victim would do.
Okay.
The perpetrator is going to rationalize and minimize and gaslight, and it's an active denial. So they're changing the worldview from their distorted
Because
perspective.
the way I understand it is they don't actually see it as bad as it
No,
is.
that's what I'm saying. They believe their own lies. They believe this is fine, and you're just too sensitive, or you're not forgiving enough, or whatever.
Mm.
Boom.
And another thing I want to point out, just if this could help anyone, is I know that the conversation right now is really heavy into narcissism and covert
Right.
narcissism, and
Right.
everyone's a
Yep.
narcissist. And I was actually really, really hung up on that for a few years, just really because it was part of the confusion. And so I don't have that clear. I can't ever say this person is a narcissist unless they were willing to go get diagnosed and be open to that. But the emotional abuse was enough for me to be like, okay, I don't need that term. I don't need to even be hung up on saying this person is such a narcissist. Now I have the proof I need,
Right.
I,
Right.
I want someone to realize they don't need that term. They don't need to
Mm.
be locked in because
Right.
I was like kind of like really um searching for that validation of like, yeah, I can say
Right.
this is true, but
Yeah.
this book gave me so much more validation, I think, and awareness to the patterns that had gone on. So
And that's also,
the
yeah,
patterns,
that's also,
yeah.
Sarah, I'm glad you brought that's why I did it in the book that way, because I don't use those terms much at all in the book. I
Mm-mm.
talk about denial. I
Mm-hmm.
believe that that's a much easier thing to understand, instead of the label is just a reflection of the denial. So no one's a narcissist without Olympic levels of denial. So, and so instead of looking at the term, I want you to look at the bones of it, what the practical realities of that denial, what it looks like, how it feels, and what it does to you. Because that's what you started to see, like, oh, wait. Instead of, oh, he's a narcissist and now I can help with that.
Mm,
Right.
right.
And also for me, I was in my own denial for self-protection and for survival. Now that I'm now that I'm getting out of denial, I'm having, and we talked about this in our last time together with Patrick, but I was asking, why am I having so many memories and like memories of things that were really, really, really difficult for me that I never even knew were there. I just have all of these almost like flashbacks in a way that will literally come out of nowhere. And I am just sobbing because I felt so um, unseen. I felt so confused. I felt so lonely. I have I probably have 30 different stories that I could tell where I just felt completely, I don't know what the word is, but just, yeah, very, very alone, I guess is the biggest alone within a marriage, which is one of the hardest places to be, really.
Yeah. I've often said it's better to be alone than together alone. Together alone is way more painful. But one of the points you're bringing up, Sarah, I think is really important to talk about, because I help a lot of women get to the place of safety. They get to a place where they're finally safe. They're not in the toxic environment with the harmful person anymore, and they're just waiting for everything to feel better. Then they get to safety, and what happens is things feel worse. And the reason why is the safety is now what you needed for that stuff to come to the surface. The reason why it didn't before is because you were in survival, right? And now you're safe. You have the boundaries. You have control of your own world. And now this is a crucial part of the healing process, is to allow those things to surface. Avoidance of pain is the beginning of all unhealthy behavior. Suppression
Mhm,
is the opposite of expression. So the more we're able to express, the better off we are. And you don't have to understand why. Just let it out,
Mm,
mhm,
feel it. And the body,
mhm,
the way things get trapped in the body, you're in trauma, and then you
mhm,
go into fight or flight. You're going to fight or you're going to run. And in an abusive environment, you're in fight or flight, but your body's never able to express anything. It's always
mhm,
this. So over time,
mhm.
it builds up, and this is what creates a lot of the physical realities, because your body's holding all that trauma. So
I feel, yep.
when you get to a safe spot and you can be like, "Ah," or hit the pillow or sob your eyes out, that's the
Mhm.
body healing. It's expressing that, and that's the healthy version of the grief process. And I believe that grief is the doorway to freedom. Suppressing
And
it,
it is deep, deep,
yeah,
deep grief.
you will
I
not
just wanna
understand
say
it. Yep.
for any woman that's going through a divorce or a separation, especially after a long-term marriage with kids, I just wanna say, I see you. It is
Yes.
the hardest. It's for me, almost harder than losing someone because they're still alive. It is the hardest thing I've ever done. But I also know that I'm not living in denial anymore, and I'm not making everything look shiny and pretty from the outside just to save somebody else's. I have to also think about myself. I matter. My emotions matter. My feelings matter, and I want other women to be able to see that and know that they can be brave. They can do it too.
all right. Well, I think I just have one closing question for both of you. I'll start with Sarah. If there's like one piece of advice or one step that a woman in a similar situation that you were in can take, what would that be? Like, where can they begin?
If they're feeling like they can resonate with anything in my story, I highly recommend Patrick's book. I mean, that would be the number one thing that I would
And
recommend.
I'm gonna link that down below too, so everyone can
Yes,
access it.
and he also does one-on-ones. I'm gonna be offering one-on-ones as well pretty soon here eventually to help get clarity. But really, what I needed, which I didn't get for so long, was someone to see me and validate what I was saying, and not tell me that I could just keep forgiving, that I could just, if I just tried a little harder to be this, this, and this, then things would be better. I needed someone to hear my pain, see my pain, and validate my pain and tell me, and I still have to do this. You're not crazy.
Yeah.
What you're experiencing is actually maybe a little mild compared to how some people might react. Like, you've suppressed a lot of feelings and a lot of emotions for a lot of years. And so I just want anyone that can relate to this to be able to be brave enough to even take the step to send a DM, send a whatever. I mean, like, I'll be in my DMs if people want to talk to me. I am not advocating for divorce. It is the worst thing I've ever gone through, but I am advocating for safety.
Mm.
I'm advocating for feeling safe in your body. I'm advocating for not letting your trauma turn into chronic physical symptoms. And I'm also advocating for the fact that if someone else has a problem and they're not changing anything about it, that you need to recognize those patterns and see that um, maybe they don't care as much as you care.
Yeah. Well, in terms of answering this question, I I have a lot of experience, and I know that every situation is very nuanced. So, what someone has in terms of assets, like people around them, financial assets, safety assets, like how safe do they feel? Those are all things that are very important about what's the next step, which is why I think it's so important that we have a safe place to talk about it, which is why I did Pathway to Hope. I would encourage you to check that out at patrickdoyle.life. Check out my book. But ultimately, on a personal level, like if you sense that someone in your world believes you, test it. Give them a little bit of the story. And if they respond well, then say a little more, because one of the main things that has to change is you suppressing the truth. But you're not going to do that until you feel safe. Okay. And even then, you're going to struggle with it
Hmm.
because you have years of
Hmm.
training to, shh, don't say that.
Hmm.
And this is like I've said before, I've seen such amazing women live in such horrific situations, but no one knows. So breaking that silence and breaking that suppression is number one. And then it starts to have its own journey. It will lead you where you need to go. I would also suggest that really start to pay attention to your gut, to your spirit.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
you can pay attention to your instincts 1% more today, it's going to be a huge change. You're never going to get to 100, so just scrap that idea. Just if I get 10 chances to hear myself internally say something and I only take 1 out of 10, we're making progress. But that's the thing that's going to lead you out. It's not this. This is,
And I will say that was a huge thing that I learned, and I should piggyback on top of that because this is something that Patrick taught me and that I learned is that when my body is tense all the time, or I'm relaxed and then all of a sudden I'm tense because I hear the garage door open, or because now we have to have a conversation or whatever, or we had a conversation and now I have a massive migraine. You have to pay attention to those
yes,
things.
it's information.
That is,
Mhm.
yes, it's information. And I ignored those things for a long, long time because I think I was mostly just in survival. I was just trying to survive and also trying to raise my kids and not have them be affected. I really didn't want them to be affected. And so I protected them at all costs.
You're an amazing person, Sarah.
Thank you. You are
You've,
too.
uh, you've overcome so much, and your courage and your love is inspiring to me. I just want you to know that. And I'm so happy that you're going to now in turn love on others in that way, help
Yeah.
them through the difficult.
It's really, I feel like it's the only way that I could live now. I feel like it's what I was created for, is to tell the truth and tell other women that they're not
And this
alone.
is, and then back to your question earlier, Corinne, this is how we change the church situation, is by an army of Sarahs. It's what it's going to take, because it's not going to come from the top down.
Yeah, and I just know that you and your courage, like Patrick was saying, is really it's gonna reach a lot of women. And I'm very thankful that you trusted me and my audience to come on and share your story. It's such a sensitive but such a important topic, and I feel honored that you wanted to come on. And Patrick, thank you so much for joining her too. It's just so fun to have to have a therapist come on and kind of chime in on these things as well. So
I'm
yeah,
glad
thank
to
you.
anytime you want to. I'm glad to come on.
Awesome. I just appreciate it.
Yeah, I thank you so much for allowing
Of
me
course.
a safe space to share my
Yeah.
story. It's been something that's been really, a lot of the details only myself or maybe, a few other people knew. So I really, really appreciate you giving me the space to share it in a safe environment. And I really hope that even some of your listeners, it would resonate with some of them, or they could share it to a friend that they're thinking of that they know is struggling with some of these things or whatever, and know that I just want them to know they're not alone. If you can relate to this in any piece, you are not alone.
That's right.
And I see you.
All right. And for anyone listening, if you resonate, like Sarah was saying, and you want to check out Sarah's offerings or Patrick's offerings, I am going to have all of their websites and their links down below in the description so you can reach them. And again, just thank you guys so much for coming on. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Bye-bye.
And that concludes today's episode. If you found value in this conversation or resonate with it in any way, I'd love for you to leave me a review on whatever platform you're listening in on and share about it on social media. Your support means the world. For more content like this, you can follow me at Corinne Adele on all platforms. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week.